Hello, my name is Regina Sikorsky. Welcome to the Bon Instructional Technology Conference, Spring 2014. I will be presenting on toddlers using tablets, instructional technology tools for the 21st century. First, let me tell you a little bit about myself. I received a bachelor's degree in Communication Sciences and Disorders from Rockhurst University in Kansas City, Missouri. After graduation, I decided to continue my education, and I am working on my Master's of Arts in Teaching, Special Education, here at Bon University. I also work at Good Shepherd School for Children, which is an early childhood center for typically and non-typically developing kids ages 6 months old through 6 years old. We recently have brought iPads into the classroom. Let's talk about tech toddlers. As we've learned this semester, technology is growing. Surveys reveal that while most children ages 2 and 3 are not yet able to swim, tie their shoelaces, or make breakfast unaided, they do know how to turn a computer on and off and navigate with a mouse. Also, 44% of 2 to 3-year-olds can play a basic online computer game, and 1/4 can use a cell phone to make a phone call. Stacy released a statement, children's experiences with technology and interactive media are increasingly a part of the context of their lives, which must be considered as part of developmentally appropriate framework. Here is a video that helps explain why technology is becoming a part of these new toddlers' lives.
And to our second story about very young children, this on the rapidly growing use of mobile technology among the toddler set. That's the subject of this month's cover story of The Atlantic. Writer Hannah Rosen looks at the new touchscreen generation, why toddlers are learning to use tablets and smartphones before they're even out of diapers, and the questions those changes are raising. Rosen joins me now, and Hannah, I guess because my youngest is a teenager, I have to admit that I was unaware that the amount of smartphone and tablet use among the youngest children, 2 and even younger.
Absolutely. It would seem alien to a parent with older children. I have older children, but I also have a little baby who came out exactly in the same time as the iPad, and who came of age, I should say. And it's kind of alarming watching a little kid, he was still in diapers at the time, be so utterly competent with this piece of technology. Almost as if he was born knowing how to do it. You know, he can swipe his fingers. It's extremely intuitive, very different from how my other children interacted with technology, which is me teaching them how to use a mouse and, you know, what the relationship is between what they're doing with their hand and what's happening on the screen. With him, it's a different story. It's like he was born to the technology.
So we know that kids are on these devices. What are they doing? What kinds of activities?
There's a whole explosion of apps designed for kids, and what I found was that parents are extremely confused. The researchers called this the pass-back effect, which means we pass our phones back to our children, but we're very ambivalent. We're not sure, is this a good thing? Is this wrecking their brains? But on the other hand, we live in a technological world. I think largely there's a lot of anxiety out there, so what I try and do in the story is alleviate the anxiety a little bit, explain to parents that there are bodies of research here and that there are extremely good apps and things that children can learn from this technology, and it's here, so we should accept it and learn how to use it in the best way possible.
Well, since you mentioned the brain, do we know what's going on in the brain of young children using touchscreen devices that's different in the nature of interaction and the level of engagement, different from, let's say, sitting and watching a television show?
We do know about that. We do seem to know that the more interactive technology is, the more children learn from it. That's a little different than what's going on in their brains. That science is still developing. But we do know that they are extremely engaged when they can hear a voice talking back to them, when they feel like the technology is including them and listening to their voice. television has been studied for a good 30 years because when Sesame Street came out, people found that alarming, that there was television designed for very young children. And so they began to study it pretty closely. And just recently, there was something called the pause developed. And for any parents of young children, you'll recognize it from the show Blue's Clues or Dora the Explorer, where the narrator asks a question, and then there'll be a pause, and the child gets to answer the question. And that was researchers' first clue that if you had the child interact in some way, that created a much richer experience for them. And apps do that automatically. I mean, almost all apps are forms of interaction where the child can make something happen, the child can talk and the voice gets echoed back, the child can draw a picture and then narrate it. So the kind of technology you find on smartphones and iPads is much more enriching for children, let's say, than even television was.
Are some of the misgivings that you report on in your story just the latest technological iteration of the sort of technology-based anxiety that comes along with every new technology? You mentioned people's misgivings about Sesame Street. That was the late 1960s.
Yes, yes. I mean, it happened with the novel, right? So anytime a new technology comes and we feel like it's about to be ubiquitous, we get nervous about what it's going to do either to the morals of our young children. Right now, we're in a neuroscience, neurobiology age, so we worry about the brains of young children. But each generation brings worry that this is not childhood as we know it. And I think we need to get past that phase because, in fact, these things are ubiquitous. They're very different from television. They're there on the counter. They're in your purse. They're on the kitchen table. They're really a part of our lives in the way that no other technology ever has been. And so I think we just need to accept that young children can do interesting things with this technology.
Did you come away from your reporting with any rules for the road, some ways to discern between good screen time and bad screen time in the final analysis?
Yes, absolutely. I do talk about some apps that I think are pretty good and why I think they're pretty good. Largely, this is a question of your individual child. I actually have different rules for different children. I have one child who's prone to sort of doing and watching and being engaged way too much, so I put strict time limits on him. But with my other two kids, I let them explore quite a bit. And I actually did an interesting experiment with my youngest son, which I write about in the story, where I let him have free access to the iPad at some point. And in fact, he treated it almost like he treats every other toy, his trucks, his puzzles. He was sort of obsessive about it for a couple of weeks and then just dropped it and forgot about it, just like he does with every other toy. So I think interesting things can happen if we just relax our paranoia and nervousness.
But you wouldn't want it to exclude everything else.
No, that's pretty clear, and there's a couple of books which I mentioned in the story which give you pretty good rules, and one of them is if you find that your child is doing that almost to the exclusion of other things or doing that in a way that you feel is too much, that's not to say at every half hour you should say, why is he playing the iPad? He should be outside or she should be outside. It's not a zero-sum game, but if your child is doing it way too much or seems way too drawn to it, you'll know it.
Hannah Rosen, thanks a lot.
Thank you.
Video technology can expose young children to landscapes, objects, animals, and phenomena they've never seen, and that they may have a hard time grasping through abstract concepts. Downloadable digital books can provide children with more access to great children's literature, particularly in classrooms with meager bookshelves. These kinds of experiences can feed children in rich content and vocabulary that improves reading comprehension in their later years. Before the advent of newer technologies, such as smartphones and touchscreen tablets, it was difficult for toddlers and young preschoolers to interact meaningfully with technology. Let's talk about the old versus the new. Traditional devices, such as keyboards, laptops, they require a certain level of fine motor development to use the keyboard, along with a certain level of cognitive development to understand the symbols on the keyboard. These devices require skills that very young children may not have yet acquired, and they are therefore developmentally inappropriate. Now let's talk about the new. Studies are now suggesting that children as young as 2 years old can easily interact with touchscreen technology. Touchscreen devices are more accessible for toddlers and young preschoolers than desktop computers and laptops for some reasons, such as children can explore touchscreens independently. Using a touchscreen surface, children can make choices from a variety of games and experiences. With a traditional laptop or desktop computer, they might require an adult's programs at a level not possible for very young children on traditional computers. Tablets can offer young children valuable, authentic learning experiences that supplement traditional developmentally appropriate practices. Now you may be asking, what are appropriate apps? These questions should help answer. How interactive is the activity? Look for apps that invite children to be engaged by making decisions or choices. Avoid apps that are little more than small video display screens. How informative is the app? Some apps help children learn about specific topics of interest in ways that empower their investigative process. For example, if a child is interested in construction machines, trucks, and tractors, apps with information and videos about these vehicles can encourage a child to find more through other methods of investigation. And lastly, does the app promote peer or teacher-child interaction? Apps that promote peers playing and working together or that allow for teacher-child interaction can benefit children's social skills as the children gain from others' ideas and assistance. Here is a list of age-appropriate apps. My very first app, Peekaboo Barn, Peekaboo Forest, Peekaboo Wild, and Trucks and Tractors. For more information on suggested iPhone and iPad apps, check out Using Tablet Computers with Toddlers and Young Preschoolers. Thank you very much for listening to my presentation, and let me leave you with this conclusion. Educators are still exploring the potential of tablet-based computers in early childhood classrooms, but more and more schools and classrooms are finding new and innovative ways to use these tools. Each week, new apps are released to explore the boundaries of what is possible with portable touchscreen devices. The creative use of these devices with young children can help to unleash their creative and intellectual potential. Thanks for listening.